And we're live. We got the technology working. This is the third live I've done, and I think I'm becoming a pro at this. So I have with me for the next hour or so Cindy Petersen, who I'm so excited to have on. She is going to bring in a lot of information and knowledge that I have just started looking into because of my own issues of growth that I've had to go through in the last 6 years that I've been full-time ranching. Now, Cindy, if you would introduce yourself and just give us an idea of the work that you're doing.
Sure. I am Cindy Peterson. I live most of the time. I live in Florida, in South Florida, and I spent about 30 years of my life in the business world. Um, in HR, but also more of in the business partnership aspect of that, and sort of use that opportunity to study people. My background is social science. I had before that I was a social worker, and so people behavior, that sort of thing's always fascinated me. I ran into a situation about 8 months ago where I had to make a decision in my life, and I made a decision to walk away from that corporate environment once and for all. And what's interesting about it is I went down this journey of like separating out. I've always had my public persona, which is this polished professional resume person, MBA, all that stuff. And then I have my personal life, which is trauma informed. You know, I had a very traumatized childhood. I spent time in child abuse, in domestic abuse, I've had very serious things happen to me over my lifetime that I sort of hid away in the background of my life. So this journey that I've been on in Substack has been sort of melting those two together. What I've learned about people, what I've learned about neuroscience, because I want to understand why our bodies react the way they do, why I can be in a situation where I think I've healed from everything and somehow end up back in a situation where I'm back at it. Like all of a sudden I feel like a step backwards. So I went through the neuroscience. I have a master's certificate in neuroscience and trauma as well, just trying to understand that. But Substack has been very, very good for me to blend those two parts of my life and to really get after the human behavior and how we deal with trauma in our lives. And I think over the years, even now when I'm looking at research, I see that a lot of it is just keeping trauma survivors in therapy, right? We're always going to be this perpetual patient. And so this is my attempt at saying no, at the end of all of this, or while you're on this journey, you actually have strengths that come that arise out of dealing with trauma. We're better at pattern recognition. We can sense tone in a room. We have lots of skills that were born out of unfortunate circumstances, but something that we should hiding and start using. So that's the leverage piece. So my Substack is the Survivor's Edge. It's broken down into essentially three parts. Under naming it, we have to name what we're then we understand it from the neuroscience aspect, and then we leverage it. So that's me in a nutshell and my Substack. So
That's beautiful. And
yeah.
I love that you shared that your public persona was different than your private persona, because those of us that have been in the corporate world, we tend to do that, don't we? We separate.
Hmm.
We become this professional. I know this from my own experience. I was on a trade floor for most of my career. Talk about a very stressful, a very masculine environment, and I was a completely different woman on the trade floor than I
Hmm.
was at home. So much so that that's what led me to be on land and start raising animals, because the stress of the office work, I felt like I needed something simple, something that I could get my hands in and play with the dirt, which is what started my whole career to be the full-time rancher I am now. So
Hmm.
uh, I shared in my quick introduction that you have a lot of knowledge. Uh, I I know this now because I've been working on this for 4 years now, but I was very emotionally disengaged. I did what I had to do. I conformed to what the cultural norms were. So a little bit of explanation. I was born in Argentina, raised in Brazil of British parents. So was brought up in a household where feelings weren't spoken about. The British stiff upper lip. And it turns out I'm a very emotional person, but I wasn't able to express that. And then when I came to the States for the university, not only did I have to adjust to a whole new different culture and understand how the Americans live and understand all these sayings and the music they heard and all these things. And of course, as an 18-year-old in my freshman year of college, I wanted to be I wanted to find friends. I wanted to be liked, and the only way I could figure out how to do it was I've got to be like them. And so I created this persona, and it wasn't until I became a full-time rancher 6 years ago that I started recognizing that I was completely disconnected.
Yeah. And by disconnected, you mean you were shut off to the emotional pieces to
Shut
that,
off.
the feelings.
Well, I couldn't, I knew I felt an emotion. I couldn't label it. I couldn't tell
Mm-hmm.
you whether it was frustration, whether it was anger. I couldn't tell you what caused it. I did struggle with rage.
Mm-hmm.
I bottled things up, and it wouldn't take, I would keep it, then something would set me off, and it'd be like, and then
Yes.
I was fine. And and that carried, and I was in a very controlled environment, in the corporate environment. And then when I came to the ranch, and I'm working with Mother Nature and Mother Nature's curveballs and animals that don't stay where they're supposed to stay, and very quickly I realized I am not in control. I cannot control this. How do I work with this? So it's been a journey, recognizing this in myself, and recognizing that all of these things was affecting the decisions I was making, was affecting, you know my stockmanship with the animals, how I was paying attention to the business of the ranch. Anyway, so that's been my journey, and I'm excited to learn from you, what we can do to start. I think the word is embodiment. Is that what the right word is? So I'll let you can share your knowledge.
Okay. Yeah, and I see there's a couple of people that joined. So if you have questions, I don't know if Christine, you can
Yeah,
watch the
yeah,
chat,
yeah. I can watch. Yeah,
but
I'll be happy to watch the chat.
okay, perfect. Yeah, I think the graphic that we have out here for this, I think Christine put it on hers. We can drop it in the chat too, or I can when I finish talking. Um, but it really does show that what we're talking about, like this carrying it all on the one side and really trying to get us to a point where we are free from a lot of the we're right now we're sort of beholden to the way our body is reacting to all sorts of things, and trauma accumulates in our body for years, and so it's this is just the first step of sort of naming what it is we're feeling. Like you said, rage, that's a really powerful word when you're in the
Mhm.
middle of just about ready to pop, to say I am feeling rage. Like, can you imagine how it glows down, and how that's going to sort of settle it down even just by naming it?
I couldn't have done
It
that,
is.
Cindy. I
I
couldn't
couldn't
have done.
either.
I was like, it was like it was always there at the boiling point,
Hmm.
and I could never tell when it would just go poof.
Yeah. And I ran into the same problem. I think I let it build up. I think especially hyper independence, like we talked about before, but hyper independence is something we as women tend to carry a lot, right? And it could be just from the home, just being in the home and taking care of your kids, all the way to that corporate environment, but also running businesses, that sort of thing. You carry, and then you start feeling resentment for, you don't want to pass along, you don't want to ask anybody for help, but you are still getting more and more frustrated, and that sort of builds to that point where you're just gonna eh, and I ran into that too. I've had I I think it's still, being able to name that and being able to say, I'm frustrated right now. Let's take a couple breaths. Let's settle down. It sounds very Pollyanna, or it sounds very, academic to say that we're going to do that. But those tools really do help to sort of reset just for a second. Because at that point, once rage hits, once frustration really starts taking over, the thinking part of our brain just goes offline.
It
Like
does, doesn't
we're
it? It's out of
lizards.
control.
Yeah. Yeah, we are running around in lizard brain, and we are reacting, and but those little quick, a quick breath, a quick thing that you can do to kind of get ahead of it, um brings that back online, and then we can start to kind of logically get ourselves back away from that. But hyper independence is one of those things that we have to name, and those are a big deal. um Bracing for criticism, um when we do finally ask for help, when we carry all the things that we do, and we think we're taking care of everybody else. Christine and I talked about this before the live started. We're taking care of everything else, and we don't feel like we deserve to have anybody help us, or to get anybody to so when we do finally ask for that help, and we do say, hey, can you look at this, or what do you think of this, and reach out, imagine at that point that you're then faced with some criticism or some feedback that maybe is good feedback, but it's not. It it, it it cuts just so much deeper. So it's really understanding how you react to that as well, and the
Or when
weight
you
of that
ask for
judgment.
help, when you ask for help and the help was really poorly done, and your thought is, I should have just done it myself, because now it takes me more effort to undo whatever they did.
And that's exactly right. That's what happens. That's how we end up in hyper independence too. We can't depend. We've learned, if you've been through trauma, in any trauma, even work trauma can create accumulative trauma symptoms. But it's a it's just this loop of, I first of all, I don't trust anybody to do anything, and then when I finally do trust you to do it, and you do it poorly, all you did was reinforce that I should just be more and more hyper independent, and that is a very heavy. I think about that picture that you put out there. It's that woman carrying all that stuff. At some point, something's going to drop, something's going to break, and it's probably going to be us, we're going to break. And so I think that's important, to name it, understand that hyper independence is something that is a trauma response. And then, like you said, if you have had that vicious cycle of doing it yourself because nobody else can do it better, or it's easier, or now I got to unwind it and do it over, and that wasted more time, that sort of thing. um your body understands. Your body only works with prediction, right? And prediction's only done because we're looking backwards. We're always looking in the past. Our brain is designed to keep us safe from the lions on the Serengeti, but it doesn't take any of these social threats as any different than a lion chasing you. So it's going to look at, any sort of criticism, any sort of failure in our trust as a true threat to our safety, And it is for some reason. Well, for some, it's psychological safety, it's your emotional safety, all of that. But it will go back and all the rules apply. It just keeps building up those rules. And so Jane didn't do a good job, so I'm not going to ask her again. Your brain's going to say, don't talk to Jane about this. She ain't going to help you. Nobody's going to help you here. You just got to do it yourself, because that's what your brain is taught to do. That's what we've taught our brain to do. So any questions on that part, the understanding of the fear or anything like that, of the fear of failure?
I don't see a question in the chat, and those of you that are here
Hmm.
live, please ask your questions in the chat. But I know because I was so disconnected with emotions, I couldn't name it. My biggest struggle was even recognizing, having that self-awareness that what I was doing was stuffing my feelings, and then anything little thing
Hmm.
would trigger it to explode. It wasn't until something else took me to a therapist, and then I shared this, and they're like, "Ah,
Yeah.
this is what you're doing." Because I just didn't have the self-awareness. I just, I'd been living, doing what was expected. I had completely shut Christine off.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what happens, is that we just eventually just, like you said, disassociate with what we're feeling. So and those are really, being able to pause, and that's the biggest part of it, being able to sort of sit. I went through this exercise a while back, where not only was I trying to name it, but I was trying to be okay with it. So, like, I'm sad today, right? I'm sad. I'm going to name that, and I'm going to call it sad. And yet, instead of trying to fix sad, I'm just going to let it sit here with me, and I'm going to be sad for the day. And that was even more work to try to figure out. Yes,
I'm
I can
sure.
name it,
Yeah.
but it's just that ability to sort of spend time on ourselves, and I don't think we do that enough. And I think you and I talked the guilt of taking care of ourselves. I was I can't even tell you how foreign that was to me 7 months ago when I started on this journey. It's this whole idea of kumbaya and
It's too woo woo.
meditation and yoga. Yeah, yoga. Yeah, all that. But I went through, so I had to do something, because I was everything everything had come to a head where my nervous system just could not shut off.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I need to get healthy. And in order to get health, and to your point, I'm snapping at everybody. I'm not, I'm running a million miles an hour just to keep. One of the things that I talk about on the Substack is just sort of this being busy. So
All
hyper
the time.
independence can be, you make yourself so busy that you can't sit and think about how to the quiet is the enemy in
Yeah.
some respects,
You
right?
can't sit on the porch and just relax and enjoy
No,
the
no.
scenery. It's like, oh, there's a weed there. I'm going to go pick up the weed. Oh,
Yes.
I need to go take.
Right. And we do that sometimes intentionally so that we don't have to process, and we don't have to name our emotions, and we don't have to get connected with the Christine that you've sort of stuffed in the corner, right? And she wants to talk to you, and you're just like, oh no, I gotta go pull this weed, I gotta go do that, I gotta go do this, and we just keep running so that we don't have to do that.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to take care of our own self and listen to our own emotions and what's
Yeah.
going on. So that actually is probably the very first step of this, is just being able to sit and take that moment, because I was the worst at that. I wrote a whole book on the month 7, like when it first started. I just wrote a whole book on leadership. Like, and my kids were like, I think she's manic. Like, I think something's wrong with mom. So I just had nowhere to go with this energy. And I didn't want to sit and process what had
Sure.
happened and what the decisions were that I was going to make. And so I just barreled through and did what I thought I could until I couldn't. So,
Yeah. You know what
but
I had to do because of my disconnection with my emotions? You know that wheel that shows all the feelings and
mhm.
the variety? I actually had to print that for myself.
Oh,
To
and point like this
to
is what I'm
actually
feeling today.
you know, is it fear or is it, you know, I had to go through that because I could not come up with, except for joy, and fear, that those were my two different emotions.
Yes. and f- and fear hides itself everywhere. Like fear's everywhere. Fear's in anger, fear's in frustration, fear's in sad. I mean, there's fear everywhere. So fear doesn't get you as far as what you think it does.
No, I know.
When you're naming it, you got to go a little bit deeper in fear. But
Yeah,
fear's
and
a
I was
start.
surprised. I was surprised how many names to different feelings there were. I'm like, wow,
Yes.
look at this.
It's interesting for that reason, for sure. And it's a lot of people have different names for it. I read somewhere somebody had said that they give they give their emotions a real name, like George. And
Yeah,
George is invited in for a minute, and then George is sent out the door. And they have all sorts of different ways of dealing with and naming, who that what is
right.
that emotion. So
Yeah,
that's a part
yeah,
of that trick.
yeah.
But the main but the first step is knowing that you have to be able to feel. You have to take care of ourselves, and we
Sure,
have to we
sure.
have to take that time, like you said, to print the wheel out and slow down and not feel guilty because we're not taking care of somebody else right now. We're taking care of ourselves.
Right.
And
Yeah, Cindy, there's a comment. I broke that cycle a few years ago. Learned to accept and appreciate how others solve problems in their own way. You say take care of yourself. What is one thing you do to take care of yourselves? Do you have an example? I do meditation and use calming and centering techniques, but is there something else that's available?
I journal every day, almost every day. I put it in my calendar because that's my I, I have a lot of times that's how I process, and that's not everybody. That's just how I've done it. Sometimes my endless scrolling can get me to exactly where I need to be. But I spend time. I'd say all of those things. I meditate. I also do yoga. So I have a wellness routine that I've started um, all these months once I figured out and that I needed to focus on myself. Um, and I do my wellness routine. I have a devotion. So I'm a faith-based person. So I do my devotion, then I do my journaling, then I do my meditation, and then I do my yoga, which is like restorative yoga. I'm not some fit person. I'm 58-year-old woman who doesn't even walk very far. And so, but I do the restorative yoga, which is like 20 minutes, and it's enough to get me stretched and feel like I've moved a little bit. And sometimes that routine is broken up through the day. Like I'll only have time to journal, or I'll only have time to do and so I just kind of throw those in where I can if I can't get it into my day. And be okay if I have to miss a day. That's the other thing. I am very like I am very regimented, and I work well with schedules and all that kind of stuff. And so I have to offer myself grace when I get to the end of the day not feeling like a failure, that I didn't complete all of these things.
Yeah.
And that's also self-care, is giving
Yes,
yourself that forgiveness.
that's
So
huge.
that's been
Yeah,
a journey.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Did that
So
answer your question?
yeah, I think
Yeah.
it did. Self-care was not something I even had within my realm of things that were important. I do know that when I was still very disconnected, that I would keep going, 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 and then there would be, generally one day a month or something that I was just down and out, and I just barely could get out of bed. And so,
Hmm.
I extended my grace and I said, okay, today's my in bed day. you know,
Yeah.
I'm taking a sick day if it was during the week.
Hmm.
But since being on the ranch, and becoming more aware of this, uh, grounding, especially being outside, and putting myself in the perspective. Generally I've got my feet in the grass, and this is the soil that is supporting me and also nourishing me, and the wind is making me feel stronger because now I'm having to resist the wind, and I've got the sun that is giving me the energy and it's keeping me warm. And so for me, that visual really starts making me realize, and the breath that I'm taking, right, that the photosynthesis is now allowing me to have oxygen to breathe, and that my heart is pumping without me having to think about it. That has really helped. But because I'm an emotional person, tapping has been part of my self-care routine.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's a big, exactly what you said. It's the presence
Hmm.
more than anything, I think. However you can be present in that moment, and it's what you said. I can feel the wind on my skin. I can feel, I can smell the lilac bush that just started blooming. That sort of thing is very critical to your nervous system, because that's telling your nervous system that you're not getting chased by a lion. You are okay, and you can even say to yourself, I'm in a safe space. People that have not been safe, um, psychologically or whatever, sometimes we need to tell ourselves, hey brain, we're not there right now. You're thinking about that, and maybe I dreamed about it last night, but I'm not there. I'm here, and I can see the blue sky and the sun. I get a lot of energy from sitting outside and being part of nature as well, and it really does help us to stay in that grounded presence. There's like there are actual tools where you can say, I'll name five things I can
Yeah.
see, four
Yeah.
things I can, all of that is there too, and we can certainly share those grounding activities. But it's just simply being somewhere where you can say, I can feel this couch under my legs, or the
Right.
tile on my feet.
Right.
And believe it or not, that really does allow our nervous systems to just say, okay, we're okay right now.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
wanted to share, all this was new to me, and so I was doing the tapping, and spent a lot of money on boxes of Kleenex because all these emotions were being processed, and I guess I'm a
Hmm.
crier anyway.
Hmm.
But um, I'd been doing it a couple months, and all of a sudden I started recognizing that my throat was feeling constricted, and I couldn't understand why my throat was feeling constricted. And I have a friend who's a therapist, and I asked her, and she goes, I don't know. And I was doing my tapping one day, and I was feeling this constriction, and I don't know, my body just decided to do this yawn. I mean, a whole body yawn. I mean, as wide as I could
Hmm.
open my mouth, and all of a sudden that constriction just went totally away. And so, and I'm like, where did this yawn come from? And I asked my friend, and she goes, well, that's your nervous system telling you, okay, I'm safe now.
Yes.
So I was like, this is so cool. So now, I know that when I'm stressed and I'm trying to get regulated, when I have that yawn, I'm okay.
Yeah. The yawning and bringing in all that oxygen and bringing it up into your brain, that's there. And also it's interesting because a lot of our nerves run, run straight up into the throat and then down the spine, and that throat, I have the exact same thing. That's when it sort of that's where I feel it too. And a lot of times it's, for me, it sounds very weird, but it's the thing that I haven't said yet. And I don't have to say it out loud. I think it's, I can do it in my journal, or I can think it and name it and do all of that, but it lands right there in my throat when I know I've got something that I need to process. So to your point, and then you yawn or you have some sort of physical reaction where your nervous system's saying like, all right, we're gonna process that and file it away. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And a humming will take care of that too. So if you're, the yawning helps, but also just a humming calms down that parasympathetic, and it will calm the the nerves that go, I don't want to get too technical, but all of the nerves that create that nervous system response. That humming does something. I don't know if you're all singers, but you don't have to sing very good,
In the
very
shower, I
well. You
am.
could
I'm
just,
really good singer in
yeah,
the shower.
yeah. It's crazy how humming, it will soothe your nervous system down. So if you can't yawn, sometimes you have the incomplete yawn when you're in the middle of that, and that can get frustrating. So if that happens, then we go to the humming. Also, like a sip, for me, a sip of cold water will also sort of reset that if I'm in a situation like that. But I know it's my nervous system too, so it's not like I think I'm having a heart attack or anything like that. It's just that's right here, and it's exactly what you just described. So a
Yeah.
little water or the humming or the yawn for
Yeah.
sure. So
And I know,
um
I know that I don't. I get nervous before I have a presentation or before I have a workshop, and before I would just sit with it, and then I started doing the tapping. But I've learned that if I can go and withdraw myself from wherever I'm going to be teaching or presenting or whatever, and go just do a walk around, generally outside. So then I have this perspective of, wide open spaces. Um, and just the movement is what settles me down so that I can come back and my voice isn't all shaky because I'm nervous.
well, and that energy stores up in you. So even like the walking is fine, but also just the tapping is another good way to get out all of that energy. It has to go somewhere,
Sure.
and it'll, otherwise it just builds up, and that could be for a presentation or whatever you're doing, which is calming your nerves. But I look a little crazy, but sometimes I just, I just start dancing or start just shaking my arms and legs because I can feel it. It's everywhere, all this nerves. I can't get rid of it. So that's the best way. The walking, anything physical will get rid of some of that pent up. Same with a stressful day, being able to just shake it out. Like they say, shake it off. I say, shake it out. Like all of those limbs, get them moving, and it'll get all of that pent up energy out a little bit. So
Yeah. In my younger years, actually, when I first came to Texas, I got really interested in herbs, and I was in a very stressful job, and I learned that rosemary was good, was a good de-stressor. So I got two pots in front of that I put rosemary bushes in, and as I walked into the house, I rubbed my hands on the rosemary bushes, and it was amazing how the rosemary bush absorbed all that stuff.
yeah, it
But
just took
just
it
the
all
act
out.
of doing that, and the smell, my touch is my strongest sense. So touching that rosemary was really important
Hmm.
for
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I'll have to try that. I like lavender. I like the scent of lavender. Essential oils are also good for any sort of, especially if you're receptive to that. It's just whatever it works to calm you down, but and to get more oxygen flowing too. So the breath, like you can take a breath. I always try to do this it's not just box breathing. So there's box breathing, which also helps. 4 in, hold it for 4, out for 4, hold it for 4. But there's the longer breath in. So you take a longer breath, you take, or the longer breath is out. So you take a breath in, and then you breathe out for 2 or 3 seconds longer than you breathe in. Helps to kind of circulate that carbon dioxide or the carbon monoxide into your body a little bit more. It digests it a little bit differently, and it's a way for you to sort of continue. It gets your brain back in the reset a little bit quicker. So any sort of breathing activities help with that sort of thing too. There's another one where we just take a quick, you plug up one nostril and you do a
Oh,
quick
I love
breath.
that one. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Me too. And it looks a little different when you're sitting in a meeting, but if you can get away with it, it's amazing how oxygen and just what we're doing with oxygen in our body can reset nervous systems a little quicker. It won't last
So since
forever,
right, since
but
we're talking about breath, Cindy, can you explain what happens with our breath when we start going into this high stress, high nervous system versus when we're calm and cool and collected?
yeah, so everything starts to flow away from all your vital nerves or all your vital organs and your brain and everything. Your body, again, is in the reptile phase. And so when you're stressed or you're angry or you're frustrated, everything's going toward everything's focused on fight or flight. There's other ones, but mainly that's what it's doing. So all of those things are shut off. So the breathing really stops that process and gets our brain working again, gets all of our organs working again. And that's what happens when you start to take those breaths. And there's all sorts of different ways that you can engage that, or whatever you're most comfortable with. I like the box breathing, or some of the ones we've already talked about. But anytime that you can get, because at some point, you can feel it. You can feel your breath is shorter. You can feel
Very
everything
shallow,
starts to
right?
tighten up.
Very shallow. You're
Yes,
like,
everything's shallow.
yeah.
Yes. An interesting thing that you can look at, which measures all of that, is your HRV, your heart rate variability. So if you have like an Aura ring or an Apple Watch or one of those things, it'll be tracking your HRV, which is the so if you're in that stage, what you just said, everything's shut down, you're in that brain where you're really just surviving. Your HRV is going to be like, when I started this process, my HRV was about 15, meaning it only varied a little bit and it was
Huh.
very low. So I thought my heart rate was great because it was fairly low, but it was stayed low, meaning I was almost in overwhelm or in freeze, right? I could still function, but everything in my body was not working right. And so now my heart rate variability, I can get stressed and my heart rate goes up and then it comes back down, because now I know how to regulate my system. But if you're in that part of your life where you are in that overwhelm, or you're like what you just said, like stressed, your heart rate's going to figure out over time that you're just constantly going to need to be in that state, and it doesn't allow you to sort of vary anymore. And that's a lot of more than what you probably wanted to know about
No, that's
that, but that's
perfect.
a
That's
really
perfect.
good trick. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's something to watch and to measure. I'm a data person by nature, and I kept thinking, well, how am I gonna get this better? I just need to get this better. And the more time I would focus on that, the worse I would get, because yeah. So anyway, but
Yeah,
yeah, so
I noticed the breath. I couldn't pinpoint my emotion, but I could pinpoint that I was breathing shallow, and I
yeah.
couldn't take a deep breath. And
Yep.
so doing the breath work, I like the 4-7-8 breathing in for
Mhm.
4, hold for 7, let go for 8. That one really does.
Mhm.
And then this one where you plug up one and you inhale and then you plug the other one and exhale. Is that how it goes? I
Mhm.
always have to
Yep.
think about
There's
how to do
there's
it.
one with a quick, you can do a quick one too, like through one nostril, and that one will also bring your brain back
Oh,
online
tell me
for a few
about that
minutes.
one. I don't know
Yeah.
about that one. Tell
You
me
just
about that one.
plug up one, and then you do a quick. My daughter is an emergency room nurse, and she uses that one when she's in the middle of something and she needs to like keep her brain online. She does that quick nostril, the quick two in, and then that helps. So
Huh, I didn't know about
it's
that one.
amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of little tricks like that, but it just depends on what works for you too. So I found different ones work for me and don't work for others, and vice versa. So, but any of those little tricks, we definitely, what's that say?
My mother-in-law is
It's
proud
not
that her
change.
heart rate is low and does not change. Maybe that explains a lot.
Yeah. Yes. So if you're constantly angry and in that, or not angry, but in that sort of survival state, it just stays. Everybody, yeah. So you can get excited about, your low heart rate. I was in the 60s and the 50s, but I never got, I, it was almost like I couldn't feel anything too,
Mhm,
right? So,
mhm.
um, and that's all part of your disconnect. I'm guessing your HRV was pretty flat during those times too, because you're not allowing yourself to feel anything. So your
Right.
mother-in-law, yeah, she probably is just
She needs to
focused.
have some. She
Yeah,
needs some breathing exercises.
yeah, she does. Or process a little bit. Yeah. So
So,
that's funny.
so Cindy, can those? Many of us think that our brain can control things. That we can say, oh, we had a terrible childhood. We can, I can think my way through this. Can we think our way through this nervous system that is in fight or flight mode?
I think I think we can think ourselves through it. We need to stay online. But what's interesting about people that deal with chronic stress, or people that have been in that sort of um, fight or flight for a really long time, or learned to deal with it, is when you are in control and you are understanding your nervous system, you can actually stay online. There's studies out there that survive trauma survivors can actually stay, and I don't mean survivors like, you don't have to have a bad childhood to be a trauma survivor, right? You just have to, everybody, eventually, you can't escape life without trauma. So it's just a matter of, what we're doing. Are we letting trauma wield us, or are we in control of what it taught us? And there's studies out there that show that trauma, people that have dealt with chronic stress or chronic trauma, have actually keep that brain online longer than people that haven't yet. And so like, people that react, I know you've seen that, like, everybody's in the bystander effect, but then you have this one person who can just jump out and like get, their brain is still working. And what makes that happen? And a lot of studies are showing that it's because people who have dealt with trauma and have managed trauma, actually that's a strength of theirs, is that they
Sure.
can go ahead and stay online and keep that thinking brain going longer. Not forever, but it will stay online a little bit longer. So, but for the most part, if you're in that stage, you have to be able to get that. If you feel like what you just said, your throat's tightening up or your heart rate's going up, and you feel those emotions coming, being able to wrangle in your nervous system, call it what it is, understand what it's doing to you, and then you can actually take that you can keep your brain online. You can get it back online quicker than others. So, but when you're actually in that state, nobody's safe. So I mean, we all go reptilian brain at that point. So it's just a matter of being able to interrupt it before you lose your online. So
So I have the scoliosis, and I've been dealing with it for 47 years. And not too long ago, earlier this year, I learned that the scoliosis was a symptom of unprocessed trauma, because that trauma, those emotions get stored in your fascia, and with time, that fascia starts constricting. So
hmm
I'm working with this lady who's doing acupuncture, but she's also doing some somatic therapy with me.
hmm
And we're going back to childhood, because the stories we tell ourselves are generally stories that we started when we were too young to understand, and we've made a conclusion, and then that conclusion is what keeps us running, for decades in my, my situation.
hmm
And one of the things that caught me by surprise was I shared with her this memory that I felt was pretty traumatic. And then she asked me to say, okay, how would you want your mother to comfort you? And I looked at her, I said, well, my mother wouldn't have comforted me, because we didn't do that.
yeah, yeah,
And she goes, well, how would you like to be comforted? And my first thought was, well, I know with my daughter, when I wanted to comfort her, I would hug her, and I would always find myself rocking. And she goes, okay, well, do that to yourself. I'm like, what? She goes, do that, hug yourself and rock. And so I did this, and I started rocking. And Cindy, blah, I mean, the
oh
floodgates just,
yeah,
blah.
hmm
um, but I find it very, very comforting, and I get a good yawn when I'm doing this, just this
hmm
rocking motion, and just comforting me. And sometimes I'm kissing myself, because
yeah,
you know.
yeah, no, it's all comfort. It's beautiful. And I'm one of those people that, and I've gotten better at it over the years, but I couldn't handle hugging and touching and all of that for
Really,
a very, very long time. And that particular hugging myself it had a whole different meaning to me once I figured out that was sort of replacing, and now I'm a little bit more open to it. I'm still not gonna like those people that hang on forever for the hugs. Like, I'm a pat and release. I'm really trying to, like, I'm just getting used to the pat and release. So, but the hanger on people I still have trouble with. I have a girlfriend that just won't let go. But I'm getting better at hugging. And I think it's from doing that and just kind of getting my body used to over the years of being able to be, touched and loved, essentially, is
yeah,
what we're talking about. So
yeah,
yeah, that's a beautiful story. And that is
yeah,
that is what we're talking about as far as what works for you, and read and join these lives and doing things and read people's, what's working for other people. That's what'll help you sort of find your way here, because all there's a lot out there, and all of it, somewhere in there you're going to find something that works,
yeah,
and keep going. So yeah,
yeah.
but you have to be able to say, I need to do this for myself, because otherwise you just get busy and you just stay busy, and it never gets
Well,
addressed. So but
yeah, it's a way not to, you said it earlier. It's a way not to deal with whatever
mhm,
that is causing the stress, right? It's like, I don't have to deal with that. You know when cash flow is tight, it's very easy
mhm,
not to open the bills and say, I don't have a bill to
yeah,
pay.
that's exactly right. I don't need to look at it, because that's just going to stress me out. So yeah, that's exactly right. And being able to just just looking at those and knowing, like, I we talked about this before too, but knowing that that's a habit, right? Knowing that my spiral is I don't open the mail, like,
Mhm,
and it only
mhm.
like literally piles up, but mentally it piles up on you also. And you just keep, you've got to be able to catch it in that way. So, but being able to know it's important to do that too. So, it catch yourself in those spirals. So yeah, those are easy to
And the
go down.
catching yourself in the spiral, and then because if you're in that spiral, your body's kind of in shutdown or high alert mode. And I know
Hmm.
what, because I'm a rancher and my income is derived on animals and weather, and income does this, right? And I came from a corporate environment where my paycheck was deposited every 2 weeks, whether I worked hard or not.
Hmm.
Now
Yep.
my income is completely derived on whether I work hard or not. um that that I it I became so focused on, oh my god, I've got to make money, I've got to pay this bill, I got to pay this bill, that it was really hard to get out of that. It limited any creativity. and
Yeah.
and I don't I the only reason that I got out of that was because I shared this with a friend, and this friend made me aware of an opportunity that helped the financial situation. But if it hadn't been for the friend, I might still be in that situation, because I was just so focused on this. And as a good cancer also, I withdrew. I
Hmm.
got into my shell, and I wasn't
Yeah.
going to ask for help, because
Yep.
ego, pride, all of these things.
Yep. All of those things. Yep. That's exactly right.
So how do we, when we're in the throes of this, how does one get out? Do you need that friend? Do you need, what can we do if it's just us?
Well, and that's where that hyper independence really can get in the way of all of that. And like you said, or if you're prone to sort of going inward and doing all that too. I also do that. And so I'm not wanting help, and I'm not talking about it. And it's just, and now I'm further and further in my head. Having a good friend that recognizes that is great. Not everybody has that in their lives, but that's certainly something. Um, and give them permission to tell you when they see it happening. I have people that'll say, I haven't heard from you in a few days, or I haven't heard from you, and yeah. So, or my husband will recognize, that I'm quiet, or my kids. Um but there's also things you can do in them, to kind of get yourself out of that. And it's just just find one little thing that you can ask someone to do for you. And that sounds super hokey, but just try it. One little thing that's very low risk and can get you out. Or in when you're sorry, my dogs are barking in the back. Can you
Oh,
hear
I
that?
can't hear them. No, I can't hear them.
Okay, good. Um, they are, but we making sure that you can sort of get yourself out of the hyper independence piece of that. You can start to just ask for a little, one little something. Just rely on somebody just a little bit and let your brain start to relax and see that. I think when you're also in that situation, and the greatest part about our brains is that we can teach it. That neuroplasticity and all the things that you hear from the long words, but it's really about teaching your brain to learn from some other playbook. And so being able to undo some of that. I know with my spirals, I wouldn't wait until I got better and better at seeing those spirals. Couple more pieces on the table of mail than I was used to. I got myself to where I could teach myself earlier not to go down that path. And then you start with the little things to kind of address that. Maybe it's just opening one piece of mail and telling yourself you're going to do, that's in your example. With mine, I would do the same, but it was like, that would be with bills too when I was young, when I was younger, and that sort of thing, making sure that I wouldn't let it snowball. But I also do that with my emotions. I'll let my emotions continue to build on something, or I'll start to ruminate, um, that endless loop. And I'm getting better at understanding when I'm starting to head into those loops, or those types of spirals. And that just takes time, but doing one little thing to break it, or finding it earlier in the spiral, not all the way at the beginning, but you can keep backwards, getting yourself backwards out of there, and remembering how you got out of it the last time, having faith in yourself that you can do it again, and you can get back out of it. That's some of the self. It's more like the self CPR we can do when we're in those
Yeah.
situations, for
Yeah.
sure. So, yeah,
So what I'm hearing is we need to be more self-aware than we are.
yeah, yeah, and be good to ourselves.
Yeah.
Being it's definitely self-aware, but also understanding the value of spending time on ourselves. So, for
Yeah.
sure, yeah,
Good. Great.
yeah.
So do you have anything coming up that you want to share with the people who are on live or on the replay?
I have the 12-week that I've spent on Substack. I have an introductory course to your nervous system that's coming out. I have a couple of 7-day resets that I do for like people that want to know more about like how to receive joy, or which is this topic we're on this week. And then nervous system resets, those sorts of things. But the big headline for me is my book that I wrote in my
Woohoo!
manic. That's coming out in August, so I'm excited about that.
That's
So,
exciting.
um,
So what's your
yeah,
what's the title of your book?
it's called The Survivor's Edge. So I
Okay.
ended
Okay.
up, when I initially wrote it, I wrote it because I was just coming out of corporate, and I wrote it from a leadership perspective. And then as I continued, I started writing on Substack, just because I wanted to write on Substack, and started to kind of, that other person, the person that I was hiding, that was the person on Substack. And then I realized that this book isn't anything about anything I want to write. I kept saying to people, I hate my book. I hate my book so much. I don't want to look at my book anymore. And they said, they're like, well, that happens and stuff. And then finally I realized that, no, I truly hate this book. So I ended up rewriting almost half of it in the last probably 3 months since I've been on Substack, and really made it more about what I'm learning from people that are interacting with me in these types of meetings and all of that. And so that's what it's more. It's on the survivor's edge. It's on how we deal with trauma. And then it's also how we don't, how we don't allow the world to keep us in therapy forever. That there are things that come out of this that we can be healed, and we can be, we may have a break, but here or there we have broken parts, but some of those rendered stronger pieces. So that's really what the survivor's edge is about. So,
Yeah. That's beautiful.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's sort of the coming together of both sides of my life, and that's what Substack actually helped me do. So, and all
Wonderful.
of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Substack is a fabulous platform. I love it.
Mhm.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, good. Uh, yeah, and if you are a land steward, and whether you're starting out or just or been at this for a while, on my Substack, I have the level 10 regenerative life assessment, which helps you. It's a series of questions that helps you bring clarity on what you need to be focusing or not. So I don't know. I recognize a few people that are in the audience that are land stewards. So that's available. And I have my paid membership, the Regenerative Women, again, geared towards land stewardship, but focusing a lot on the human, on the woman, and all her all her beautiful traits and the things that she thinks is broken. and how that brokenness can actually be a gift. I facilitated a workshop yesterday, and it was all about the fears and trying to introduce the fact that these fears can be gifts if we can if we can get to that point.
Yes. And it's not romanticizing
No, it's
trauma
not.
or
Yeah,
fears or
yeah,
anything like that. It's just that's not the end of the story. Like, let's stop making that the end of the story. I healed, I did it. I did it. I survived. It's exactly what you just said. I want to, it's a gift in some ways, and it's not
right.
the romantic gift. It's a hard won gift,
Yeah,
but still a skill, a talent somewhere. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, Cindy. I
Yeah.
so appreciate you spending your Friday afternoon. I hope you have a wonderful Father's Day weekend with the family. And for those of you on the live and for you watching in the replay, um, I hope you have a wonderful Father's Day weekend. I'm not doing anything except working on the ranch.
Well, I appreciate inviting me to this audience and to be part of this. It was wonderful getting to learn all about the regenerative farming and all of that. I'm just naturally curious anyway, and I just loved reading and getting up to speed on that. So thank you.
Well, if anybody has any questions, pop them on the messaging, and I'm happy to answer. I've made all the mistakes, so I know everything that can be done wrong, and I'm happy to help you not make those mistakes.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. Have a
All
lovely
right.
weekend.
Thank you.
Okay, bye
Bye.
bye.